I really do think just thinking outside the box is my biggest thing. Don't be scared to do what no one else is doing. And honestly, that's the biggest thing, because if someone's already doing it, they're already doing it. You got to do what you need to do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Commerce, Coffee, and Community Entrepreneurs Edition podcast. I am so welcome to be inviting Katrina Wiebe of the Open Door Café onto this episode today. How are you doing, Katrina?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
That's excellent. I can't tell you how excited I am after filming some episodes of this podcast to now have a coffee business on. We're not just the podcast now that you listen to while you drink some coffee. We're the podcast that has some coffee heads on it.
It seems like it fits. It seems like it fits.
Exactly. So I'll get you to start off today by telling us a little bit about yourself and where you grew up, and also what initially brought you to the community of Prince George.
Well, I actually grew up in Kamloops and Chilliwack, so spent most of my life down between those two cities, and ended up moving up here when my husband got work up here about 6 years ago now. So originally came up for that, but really just fell in love with the culture and the small business community and just the people up here. It doesn't get as much credit as a city as I think it really should.
Absolutely, surrounded by just so much greenery and hiking and pretty much anything you can really think of. This city has, perfect little small community. Now, outside of running your business, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second, what is your favorite thing to do in Prince George?
Okay, that's a hard one because there's so many cool things up here. But I'd say the biggest one, I grew up doing a lot of sports. I was a national level synchronized swimmer. When the Canada Games were here, I was team captain of Team BC. And I've been able to get involved with the synchronized swimming club up here in Prince George, and they've got a great little synchronized swimming club, and definitely something that I love spending my time on. I haven't been able to do it as much with starting the business, but I mean, that's to be expected. It's busy.
Definitely a lot to take on initially, but hopefully you'll find some more time to revisit that passion. Now, speaking of your business, tell us a little bit about what the Open Door Café is and where you got the idea to start this business.
Well, I mean, I always loved coffee shops. From a young age, I wanted to spend all my time there reading books, and it was just such an awesome atmosphere. And at some point along the way, I realized, well, maybe I can make a living off being in a coffee shop all the time. That feels like the thing to do. So I was down traveling in Australia in 2016. And that was when the idea really clicked, like, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. They've got an amazing coffee scene down there. And while traveling, I was just like, this is what a coffee shop can be. This is what an atmosphere can really bring to people, because it just brought so much community.
Right.
And I loved that. And so after falling in love with it down there, I came back and started the journey of, saving the money and going to school and trying to get to the point where I could open my own.
Absolutely. I wouldn't think Australia would have a coffee. It's too hot there.
They have like such a cool coffee scene. Like,
okay.
They don't have Starbucks at all. It's not a thing down there. And McDonald's has like good coffee.
Oh,
I feel weird saying that, but it's really, and like they've got so many cool local coffee shops. Like, I don't know, you wouldn't expect it, but they've got great coffee down there.
That's too cool. That's too cool. I'll have to check it out one day, hopefully, when I'm down there. Now, with the Open Door Café, you've kind of started the business at, a difficult time for businesses in general. You started it back in 2021?
Yeah, May 2021.
May 2021. And, how has the business grown in the past year? And, where do you see it headed sort of coming up this next year?
Yeah, so we really started this business in a non-traditional way. We started off as a mobile business, so kind of like a food truck, but like not quite a food truck. Basically, we built this 8-foot counter on wheels, set it up under a tent, and just like put an espresso machine on it, and loaded it into a trailer every day, took it home, and like it was a lot of work. It was a lot of heavy lifting.
I bet. That's a lot of pack up every day.
I was in great shape. But, we kind of started that way and have now we started outside of Books and Company. We were on their back patio, kind of operating 5 days a week and then doing events on the weekends. And from there, we ended up moving into Two Rivers Art Gallery for a month while we renovated a sea can that is now our like semi-permanent little coffee shop up in the heart. And have kind of just like transitioned from being mobile to being more permanent. And now we're actually renovating a permanent spot right beside where our sea can is. And that's going to be like our home base. So yeah, it's really kind of evolved from like this mobile thing to like a normal coffee shop. Almost. We don't have plumbing yet, but we're almost there.
Okay.
So it was a very unconventional way to start. But at the same time, like it let us grow in a way where we could learn along the way and like take baby steps.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Kind of prevented you from, overextending too early. That's something that I think a lot of people assume they're going to do, as entrepreneurs. I'm just going to open a business with 10 employees and have to really get myself in there. But that gradual sort of increasing, getting exposure, that can definitely be a helpful way to manage sort of the pressure.
Oh, you're going to have to like hustle either way, but like no matter how you start, I think doing it in a way where you can do it a little bit slowly and get your feet under you first really allows you to go farther because you have a stronger foundation of, you didn't try and do everything at once, fail at everything at the exact same time, and then have to go from there. We got to fail at everything in baby steps, Yeah. So that was kind of like what our last year kind of looked like, is growing from this mobile thing to this like semi-permanent, going to be a permanent thing. But in the future, I'm a bit of a dreamer. Like I like to look big, and we're hopefully within the next year going to have a second location.
Okay.
And long term, I've got like a 4 to 5 location plan. So
very cool.
We got more baby steps to take.
That's cool. And are you thinking sort of, you want all the businesses to be, unified in exactly the same way? Or are you thinking like, some mobile carts, some sea cans, some storefronts? I like that.
It's going to be different. So I want to have a couple like storefronts. I also want to do a mobile thing because I loved it. It was so fun going to all the events and like there's such a cool market community here. Like I loved being a part of it. We're going to definitely need to get back into that. I'd also love to do like little kiosks and like places where it's just like a grab and go and less of like a sit down. Because sometimes you do just need to like drive through, grab a coffee and go. Like, so
that's
it's
like
it's going to vary a bit.
That's the entrepreneur life, creeping in. All those entrepreneurs need that drive through.
Yeah. Oh, it's a thing. It's a thing. People love it.
Let's take a step back to the very start of the Open Door Café. And, for people listening who are thinking about starting their own business, what were the first steps you took to prepare, think back to 2016 and going forward?
Oh, man. 2016, I just had a notebook full of ideas. And I wrote down every single idea I had, and I still have it. And a lot of them are really bad ideas. But I took the time to write them all down and get them all out there. And I think just that process of really thinking through exactly what I wanted and just not being afraid to have bad ideas.
Right.
That was so important to my process of getting it to where it is today and, it becoming what it is today. And then from there, I ended up doing a bit of business school. I went to TRU, just online courses. I did like 1 semester. It was not a lot. But I stretched it out over like a year and a half. And it really it gave me some like foundations in business.
Right.
You really don't need a lot of schooling to open a business, but it can help. Mm-hmm. I think for me, like, I'm not going to lie to you. When I think back to my business school, there's not a lot where I think about it and I'm like, wow, that one thing that I learned, that made a big difference for me. I think the biggest thing was that it gave me the confidence to say I'm opening a business, and I've been to business school.
Right.
In my head, it gave me permission to open a business. I didn't need the permission, but in my head, it gave me that. So in that way, it let me give myself that permission, and like, it was something to work on while we were building the finances and, what we needed, financially to just start the business. So
definitely
give me that purpose.
I think a lot of people kind of struggle in terms of being entrepreneurs, thinking that they need to get like a 4-year degree or like, even a full diploma program. But, foundationally in business itself, as an entrepreneur, you need a lot of things, but there's always people in those areas that will be able to help you. There's
of course.
Financial managers, there's accountants, there's bookkeepers, there's marketers. Yeah. So don't feel like, if you're looking to start a business, don't feel like you need to, have all of those credentials. You just need an idea, lots of passion, and, preferably a good network with some tools that can help fill those gaps there.
Totally. And I think anyone who is looking to be an entrepreneur needs to know, like, they can't do it all. Like, even if you have a strong foundation in the accounting and the marketing and just operating the business as a whole, like, you can't do it all. Not successfully, because we're all just human beings. Like,
exactly.
we have limited energy sources.
Everyone's got 24 hours in a day, and hopefully some of that is sleeping. So
hopefully,
exactly.
It's one of those things where I think getting some formal education can be very helpful, but it's not always really necessary.
Absolutely. Fair enough. Yeah. So, one thing I love about hearing about your story is it's unconventional to what a lot of people think starting a business is. Like we talked about before, it's not stepping into, a working operation with 10 employees and a whole lot of overhead and stress.
Yeah.
It can be an idea transitioned into a concept that's then, scaled progressively as the business concept is proven and, as you're making sort of an impact in the community. So I wanted to, get you to briefly touch on how scalability played a role in, working your business from concept to where it is today.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big things in business is that it's always changing. There's always going to be some hiccup you don't foresee. And, there's always a lot of risk. So when we started the business, we were terrified of failing, which, I mean, that is so dependent on so many things. It could be you and your business. You might not be running it well, or the economy, or a pandemic, or you have a bad employee who steals from you. Like, there can be things outside of your control that you really, that risk that you can't completely mitigate. So
definitely,
I think with the scalability that we went in very low risk. We had to financially invest in our mobile cart, but at the same time, we didn't have a space we were leasing. Right. We didn't have the overhead. We didn't really have utilities to pay or a lot of staff. I started with a friend who, helped me out, and we kind of built from there. And really just starting small let me learn baby lessons as we went. So,
definitely.
I learned how to hire one person, and then I learned how to hire two, and then I learned how to manage a team and how they work together. And it was just one of those things where you can learn it all at once, but like, as I mentioned before, then you fail all at once, because there's going to be those ups and downs. There's going to be those lessons that you learn, and that's just part of the journey. I think at the beginning I had a little thing in my head would be like, okay, this is today's disaster, because there's always something that like you can't foresee. And
definitely.
As you go, you can foresee and predict it a bit more. But I think starting without that big overhead and that big financial risk is really just allowed us to get into it without the stress of what if I lose my house on top of everything else.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. You don't necessarily have to, come at business with an approach like that to where it's an all or nothing opportunity.
Yeah.
And yeah, that gets scary, right? So
it does. And I think it's one of those things where if you don't know if the business is going to work, like, how do you justify that risk? Not to mention, it is almost impossible for a new business to get a loan. Like, you can't go to the banks. You need 2 years of business experience, like,
right.
of the business making money. And a lot of the programs where they will help new businesses get a loan, it's higher interest rates, and it's tricky.
Yeah.
And so starting where you don't need a lot of that financial down, we were able to make money with the cart and then use that money to invest more. And then it would make more money, and then we'd use that money to invest more. And like, we built it from using, a small amount of money and using that money to make more money. And then we were able to do something like renovating a building, which we couldn't have even dreamed of doing when we started, without like a massive loan.
Exactly. So, and I think it helps separate business from personal, which is a really important thing for a lot of entrepreneurs is, when you have an idea that might be risky but scalable, you're able to separate, you're not having to go get a loan where you're tying personal assets to the business.
Yeah.
And, that puts, your family at risk, that puts your significant other at risk. If you've got kids, that's a much harder decision to make than, working your butt off and saving that base capital that you need for a smaller vision of your main concept, right?
For sure. And I think a lot of businesses are a lot more scalable than people expect. Like when I was first starting about opening a coffee shop, I was like, well, we're going to start small. And I was like, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you do a small coffee shop? Don't you need a space, and you need staff, and you need like running water and all those things? Like, so you need utilities. And so we found creative ways to work around that. But you really do have to think outside the box to be able to scale when most people don't. Like, it's not the norm to start, as a tiny little like rolling cart. A glorified lemonade stand.
But look at where you are today, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's maybe, and if people are worried about the stigma of starting small, you got to brush that ego aside, if that's even a consideration, right?
You really do. Yeah. And a lot of people thought it was cool. Like,
oh yeah,
it's such a unique idea. We got a lot of, how did you build this? Like, what is going on with this thing? And it was kind of fun. It was fun to be different. We were that coffee cart that had wheels, Exactly. Or the coffee shop that showed up in random places in town. And like, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
That's very cool. So, we're still in the entrepreneurial journey as it is today, but if I could ask you for your proudest moment so far with the business.
That's hard because we've had a lot of cool moments. I'd say one of the biggest ones was moving up to the heart. We renovated this shipping container. We took this metal box, we cut out windows, we put flooring, insulation, drywall, we painted it. We did a lot of work on that thing. It was this rusty yellow, bent out of shape metal box, and we turned it into a cute coffee shop. And moving it up there and signing the lease on the location right beside it, that was a really proud moment because it meant that we were doing it. We were moving towards like having a full sit down area and like being like a stable business. I think being mobile, you are at the whim of what events, how often people are going out, the weather.
Yeah.
Bad weather means it's a bad event.
It can be hard to navigate in Prince George.
It's a lot of up and down. So getting a permanent space meant that a little bit more in terms of like permanent success, right? And so that was a really proud moment for us. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. And of course I have to ask, what has been your biggest hair pull moment? Where you were just kind of like, I'm this close to cutting my losses.
Okay, that's hard because there was also a lot of lessons we learned. Can I give you two? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. One of my big hair pulling moments actually came out of what was close, like my second for proudest moments. We went to the BCNE over the summer.
Okay.
And it was great. It was a lot of fun. It was so busy. It was probably our busiest week that we've ever had. Halfway through this thing, we ended up like getting vandalized and like my phone got stolen. They hacked the bank account. And so it was like, it was it was a whole thing. And at that point it was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Hair pulling, you put all this work in and someone can just ruin it like that. And so that wasn't fun. And then the other one was we ended up moving to Two Rivers Art Gallery, and the people there are amazing. It was such a good experience when it came to the people we were working with, but it was dead as a doorknob. So that was another moment where, you're scared, like you're not making money. You can't support your staff. You can't do renovations. And that was a hair pulling moment of like, well, what do we do? How do we make this work? It was supposed to be like a temporary thing, but in that moment when you're losing money, it's scary. So
definitely
that was a slow hair pull, but it was still a hair pull.
No, absolutely. Like, and I think it's important for people coming into entrepreneurship knowing that it's not all, success all the time.
Yeah.
It's a fair bit of, oops, I miscalculated. Let's reconfigure where we were going and head that way.
Yeah, for sure. You have to adjust so much. And after that, we did the CCAN. So right after that, like that moment of hair pulling, we went to one of our proudest moments. So there's going to be those waves, but you gotta be able to adjust a bit.
Absolutely. Speaking on your social media, if you have not checked it out, listeners, can I get you to plug your TikTok and Instagram very quickly?
Okay. The Open Door Cafe.pg is our Instagram. We actually have a TikTok, but I have not gotten into it as much as I need to. I've posted like 2 things on it. So mostly just on Instagram right now.
Oh, okay. I thought, sorry, my apologies. I thought the reels were TikToks.
They should be.
First.
They should be.
I think so. There's viral potential here. Now, something that I have seen, Katrina and her team participate in is very, very fun social media. Yeah. When a lot of people come into business, they think their marketing has to be corporate. It has to be clean logos and informational only, and maybe a picture of the product or something like that. Specifically in food service, maybe it's just a photo of what you have for food that day. But Katrina and her staff are actors. They have fun. They incorporate, a bit of meme culture, for lack of a better term. And, it's just a fantastic and engaging way to do social media. Now, asking you, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to take on this more personalized approach.
Okay, so I didn't mean to start. It was kind of an accident. And not an accident. It was more so like we decided to make one reel while we were mobile because we had some extra time. It was slow. And with that reel, we saw 3 times. We got 3 times the likes we did than as opposed to like a picture of a coffee. We got like 5,600 people saw this reel. Wow. And so at that point, it was like, wow, like people saw this and like, that's a lot of reach. Like you pay for advertising that gets that much reach. And so at that point we're like, well, let's keep doing it. And, over time we've kind of like narrowed down why we're doing it and, why it works. And a big part of that is like relatability. Like people want a human on the other end of it, right? It's real. And I think it's something that people can relate to. And, I don't know. I think you don't connect to a scone, you connect to a human, right? It's not something that you can really get away from is like, whether you're talking to another business, whether you're talking to a customer, it's always a human being on the other end.
Definitely.
And so doing these reels, doing these fun things, it makes us human. People have been stopped in Canadian Tire being like, you're the Open Door Cafe person. But it makes us real. And I think it's also engaging. Like how many times do you see promotional corporate stuff when you're scrolling and it's boring? You flip past it. Like, who cares? I don't want to read this information thing. But I mean, people will go and watch TikToks in their free time and reels in their free time. And people go there for the entertainment in the first place. Why not put your advertising in a way where they're going to want to watch it? Put it in a way where people want to engage with it. And also it's fun. My staff love it. Like, like I know they are always overjoyed when I'm like, we're going to make reels today. Like that is fun work.
It's a content day, guys.
Right. Right. It's a lot of fun and it builds our work environment. Like you come by and you know that they like working there and you know that we have a good team atmosphere because, well, you know what? We have fun at work. Like,
definitely,
sometimes we drag each other through the snow and like dump water on each other for, like it really adds to the environment. And that's a really important thing to us. So.
Yeah. It's just so good to see, that personalized element and it really helps communicate your company culture more than, a logo or an act that you do every year kind of thing. Like, it just tells your viewer and, your customers as well, this is a community focused business. We have fun. Yep. We have good products. I just think it's great. I have been, I've been in post-secondary for the last 5 years here. Yep. And marketing in the post-secondary space is very corporate and so I've changed my perspective on personalized, TikToks and reels in business promotion over the last little bit. And I just think it's such a fantastic way to businesses to have a little bit of fun with their content.
Well, it is. And I think as a consumer myself, like, what do I engage with? And normally it's not the corporate stuff. Like, it's just not. And I think it's one thing to just put your marketing in a way that catches people's attention is eye-catching. And the reels do
Definitely.
that for sure. Also, like, there's no way to communicate how good coffee tastes over a photo. So you may as well communicate something that people can tangibly see, which, work environment, or we're fun, or like we care about our customers and our job. Like, you can communicate that in a video.
Exactly.
So
No,
communicate something that works, right?
that's great. Now, why in your business do you feel it's important to view other businesses as collaborators rather than competition? I ask you this because, a lot of businesses want to be making all of the products in their cafe,
Yeah.
or all of the, products on their shelf have to be, from their warehouse or their supplier.
Yeah.
Why do you feel it's important to, bring other businesses into your business?
Now, this is a really big one. This is a really big part of our business and how we operate the whole thing. Initially, it started because I didn't have a kitchen, so I needed baking of some sort. So I, paired up with Bread and Butter Cream and Ruby's Little Bakery, and eventually Black House Bakery, and just because we didn't have a way to do our own baking. But
Right.
as we went along, it was like, well, I'm not this good of a baker. Like, I'm good at coffee. Like, but these people, bake scones and cookies and delicious treats for a living. Like, this is what they make their living on, and they're so much better at it. And so we have amazing baking because of that, but it wouldn't be as good if I'm doing it. And same with the food. We work with Farmhouse Catering, and they are internationally trained, right?
Right.
And I don't have time to go to school for that. I'm not going to be able to, make a sandwich that's as good as what they can make. And so I kind of started off out of necessity, and it morphed into, this is so much better. And hearing from my staff too, they've mentioned more than once that, as a staff, they would be the ones carrying the brunt of making the sandwiches, of doing the baking, of all the dishes that go with it as well. Like, there's a lot that goes into that, and that puts a lot of pressure on them as well.
Right.
And so as a boss and as a business owner, I don't want to put that pressure on them. That is a lot on top of, like, they have to be baristas and, like, talk to customers and everything like that too. So, I mean, I think we have better baking because of it. I think my staff are better off because of it. And it's also great for other local businesses. Like, we get to be a part of a community and, like, support each other and work together. And I think something that is not talked about enough in business is that it's about relationship.
Yeah.
And that comes back to the social media too, is we're connecting with people. And with these collaborations we have with local businesses, it's about the relationship you have with them, and relationship you have with the customer, and relationship with your staff. And I think to do well as a business, it's more about the relationships you cultivate than, honestly, sometimes even the product you sell. Because you
Right.
can have a great product, but if you treat people poorly, you're not going to do well.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it just makes sense. And also, like, we get to share customers and gain more customers because of this. Like, we do a lot of giveaways and, like,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And we love doing stuff like, those kind of collaborations because, we get to reach new customers, and the people we're working with get to reach our customers. And, we kind of get to share this, pool of people who might be interested in our stuff. And it's good for everyone. Like, everyone benefits. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that collaboration, and, their customers come to you,
Yeah.
and, them knowing that, oh, I can get Farmhouse Catering at Open Door. I'm going to grab a coffee too. So there's this cross promotion element.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, in operating businesses in smaller economies, sometimes forget that we have a limited amount of resources. We have a limited amount of customers
Yep.
in our region. And, sometimes it's not about trying to compete with everybody, right?
No.
Like, if you're doing baked goods, sandwiches, coffee, you're competing now against 3 times the businesses that you would be as a barista.
Totally.
So it really helps, I think, a lot more business thrive when you can collaborate and, see where cross promotion can be found in your industry.
100%. Well, and a lot of the businesses we work with, like, they're not going to do a storefront because it's expensive, but I'm doing it anyway. So
Right.
it does great things for them because they don't need to have staff to man the storefront. They don't need to renovate a storefront. They just get to sell me their stuff and then I get to do all that.
Yeah.
And so I think it really builds our local economy and like just the small businesses and the local, like the people, right?
Yeah.
And that makes such a big difference. Like we can see the difference in doing just these collaborations and working with people, because like financially it makes sense for everyone involved. And
Definitely.
I think one of the things with doing everything in-house is that it burns people out. You're not feeding into your local economy, and like you said, like there's so much competition. So
Right.
yeah, it's been a really good thing.
It even helps give businesses smaller than your own a leg up, right? Like they're in the stage, where they've got their coffee cart, in terms of like baking, right?
Yeah.
So, the more we can help them, the more successful they can become as well. And it's not like it's at a detriment to your business.
No.
You're thriving as well. So definitely love to see collaboration in small economies. And, I feel like even business in bigger metro centers should be, exploring collaboration as much as possible, even within like their city block or something like that, right?
For sure. Well, and I mean, that was part of the whole idea of the business in the first place. That's actually part of the name. A lot of people assumed we picked the name the Open Door Café because we were outdoors. But actually that really had nothing to do with it. Although it worked great.
Definitely.
It really did. But we decided on the name because we really wanted a very welcoming environment. And what's more welcoming than an open door, right? And it's kind of cool being able to use the business to open doors for other people too. So I think just being able to embody that name with,
Definitely.
The action, like that's cool. I love that.
That's really cool. And it's neat to see that mission like translate through your name like that. That's so like the most honorable thing in business is, helping others sort of get to the situation you are surpassing or, are occupying, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole idea, actually, when I first started the business, I wanted it to completely be like a charity, where it was like every penny we made would go to like charities and stuff. And honestly, it wasn't quite realistic because you need to invest the money you make back in to be able to do more. And I'd love to be able to make that a part of it once we become, a little bit more stable and established. But being able to give back in this way, like it makes sense for us financially, makes sense for other people financially. And so we get to tie that in without it being like, wow, I'm going to work for free for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
It balances that, but still keeps that mindset.
Definitely. Now, we talked a little bit about collaboration there. And I think some people what's holding them back from starting a business is their limited network, right? How, as a business, have you been able to, if you could share some strategies on how to network with either other small businesses or also just, entities within the community to build your network and grow your business that way?
For sure. Well, I mean, I think networking in the first place is just a fancy word for making friends. And that's really all it is going into situations and be real, be yourself, be honest. I have had so many conversations with people where I'm like, hey, do you know what you're doing? Because I don't. And people respond well to that because you're a real human, right? Yeah. They don't want to look at you and be like, oh, that's the business lady. They're like, no, that's Katrina.
Definitely.
Right? You're a human being. And I think that's really important when you're getting to know these other business owners. And people in the community who are part of this world is like, just be real and ask questions because a lot of people are going to be willing to answer them. Something that worked really well for us was because we scaled so much and started so small, we were at a lot of these markets. And there's a lot of small business owners there and people who are also trying to connect and network. And so we met a lot of cool friends there. That was amazing. And then through social media as well, like, we've been real and we get a little bit of attention with our reels. So we get to connect with people through that too. And so, yeah, just be real, reach out to people, and don't worry about being crazy professional because most of us are just human beings anyway. So
exactly. And, just to touch on that a little bit more and to kind of clarify your position, you moved here in 2015?
14.
Okay. So 2014. So, you haven't had, this is a perfect example for, people like myself who've, moved here for post-secondary, only been here for a couple of years, but it's not like you need to live in that community forever to put yourself out there and find, those little markets and social media and all those other small businesses who are just as interested in, engaging with you as, you know, you are with them. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's something where having friends and connections with people who are doing what you're doing, it gives you people to talk to. Like I have, you know, friends who run coffee shops in town, and there is nothing better than being able to compare and talk about things that are frustrating and, you know, work through those problems with people who actually understand what you're talking about. Because often, like, I can talk to other business owners, and that's great and awesome, and I love it. But talking to a business owner who's in the same business as you, like, you get to learn a lot more, and I think really just find that companionship in ways that you couldn't with people who are just, you know, generally business people. And so, yeah, I think just being able to connect with people it's just so important.
Definitely. And a good bit of that too is I think people think that business owners don't want to talk about their business.
It's all we want to do.
Exactly. For some like weird protectionist reason. But, you know, 99% of the time, a business owner is going to be like, yeah, like this is what I've gone through. Oh my gosh, I'm going to dish the tea with you because I don't have people of my own to talk about this with, right? Yeah. So definitely there's opportunities out there. There's mentors where you wouldn't think to find mentors.
Yep.
Even in your industry itself, who might view you as a competitor, more often than not, they're looking to, you know, also contribute to you as a person and your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, for sure. One of my my big mentors in just learning all this has been Lisa from Bread and Buttercream. So she's one of our bakers, and she's fantastic, has given me so many words of wisdom. And then also Owen from Books and Company, because we were operating off their back patio. And so, you know, they had a coffee shop in there for like almost 30 years. So he knows the industry and was just such a great resource to get to talk to. And, you know, someone who would understand when I'm like, hey, like, why is this happening? He's like, I still don't know why this happens in the market at this time of year. Like, you know, so like you just got to look for the people who are willing to connect with you. And to be honest, not everyone will want to. Like, there's some people who are not always happy for you. And that's just part of the journey. There's going to be people who haven't had enough coffee and just are not having a good day. And it's, you know, it happens. And so you just got to find the people who do want the best for you.
The well-caffeinated individuals who are ready to share.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. I just want to thank you so much, Katrina, for coming on and sharing your story with us today. If I could get you to close us out with one last piece of advice for our young entrepreneurial listeners who want to start their first business.
For sure. I really do think just thinking outside the box is my biggest thing. Don't be scared to do what no one else is doing. And honestly, that's the biggest thing, because if someone's already doing it, they're already doing it. You got to do what you need to do. So think outside the box, be unique. Don't be scared to do something that sounds ridiculous. And yeah, just connect with your community, because that's really important too.